the most important thing anyway that I'm taking away from the BFA is how I write. Because prior to having studied at Stony Brook and prior to having had like the advice of my personal like thesis advisor, Paul Harding, God bless him, but also the other professors in the program that I have had, I could tell you how I wrote, so to speak, but everything I would have told you would have literally been dead wrong. Now having surpassed the like what 4,000 word count and done more than just short stories because it's my thesis, I actually know what my long-term process is. And that's really great, not only for creative writing, but any project that you do, really. Knowing more or less how you work when something takes more than just a week to turn in.
Loved every single part of like having like my peers, having my advisors. Megan's the whole reason that I'm in this major to begin with. So I'll always have a great appreciation for her, but really just like you guys have made this the best choice of my life. I was so scared to switch majors at first. I was so scared to be like a year behind in graduating, and you all made it so like so much fun, so worth it. I got to know all of you guys.
I probably came into this as probably the least experienced and the least polished out of all my peers in the program. And I learned that very quickly when I took Megan's 250, listening to people like Sharon and Jesse and Emmeline break down the Odyssey. And I was like, I was like, huh? Like a lot of it went over my head. But I don't know how many of us would actually finish these projects on our own if it wasn't part of the thesis program, or if we didn't have such great thesis advisors pushing us and giving us confidence and good feedback and really just giving us, you know, the courage to move forward and finish.
I think it was a really good experience for me to test my boundaries in writing. I think it also helped me develop my identity as a writer. I think that's like one of the biggest things. So I know I took a lot of poems that I've done in the past and comparing it to what I have in my manuscript now and like developing like an aesthetic and theme for my manuscript, it's so refreshing. And I'm proud of myself, and I'm really blessed that I was able to work with Julie, and not somebody who just tells me, oh, it's all amazing. Like, I'm glad I got the critiques, and I'm glad that I was able to see how I can further develop certain like thematic approaches and like lines and structures in my own work. And I think overall, one of the biggest takeaways from this program is seeing your growth towards the end of it.
I am a poet. I took so many workshop classes and I felt the most comfortable studying poetry, which is something that I wasn't expecting. I also learned a lot about my process as a poet. I always heard that saying that if you want to be a writer, you should sit down and write for a few hours a day, but I learned very quickly last fall that that wasn't the case for me. I don't write as often as I'd like to, but like inspiration comes and goes, and I have accepted that at this point.
Writing isn't something that's like this mystical, unachievable thing that's reserved for those great writers of the past. That the most interesting writing that I've read as a student is always of my peers and my contemporaries. And it's always so exciting to read what my peers have to write. And it makes me realize that we all have the capacity to create one of those great works of fiction, and that usually something like that is just like right in front of our noses.
Meeting Jake in Grace Dilger's class, and I was so excited to be paired with you because I don't know, but like I just knew. I was like, this kid is interesting. I don't know why, but he's interesting. And like, you know, we were talking about each other and each other's identity, something that was actually quite personal, but we're going about it. And it's so interesting because I know for a piece of mine, I won't talk about Jake's, but for mine, like I know I talked a little bit about religion. And that ended up being like a common theme that I'm like, crap, this would be good for my thesis.
Like personally, I really connect a lot with Jolina's poetry. I think Jolina writes really beautiful stories in her poems. They're like, short stories almost through poetry. And it's so human and it's so of our time.
Sharon's writing is one of the most interesting things to describe. And this is because I feel like when I'm reading it, I'm reading like a new age, like scripture in a way. I guess that's the best way I would describe it. It's basically like reading a mix. I'm really only just speaking on like the piece that she's working on now. It feels like reading like a post-apocalyptic like and Bible story. She has this really interesting way of combining the future with the past.
Maduri is probably my closest friend in the program. I noticed her when I took Neil Gabler's, I believe it was a nonfiction writing class. And she was super quiet. And then when she spoke, she was so intelligent. And I remember we had a break. It was Gabler's class was 3 hours. He gave us a little break. And, most people get up, they leave the room or they walk around for a little bit. And she didn't move. And I just went, it was like this first or second class. And I just got up and walked across the room and sat next to her. And I was like, hey, like, I think you're brilliant, basically. And I started asking her questions. And, some people might have got creeped out by that. But she, especially since I'm a little bit older in the class, is like, hey, who's this old guy that's coming over and weirding me out, But no, she was great.
I'm super grateful to be in the first graduating class of creative writing majors. Everyone is so kind, first off, but also amazing writers, also different as well. And two people that I want to shout out real quick are Jelena. She's a poet. She's amazing. Her style is so good. I admire her as a writer because her voice is so specific. I can honestly pick out one of her poems in a lineup. She is so straight to the point. Her style, I cannot say enough about it. I love it so much. And part of the reason that I was able to recognize the qualities in my writing was seeing it juxtaposed against hers. She's amazing. I love her.
So yeah, basically, I'm only in this program because I took Will's screenwriting class, and as far as him as a thesis advisor, he has this unique ability to elicit the material out of you without pushing. He's so kind and calm. He's not overly critical. But he's so technically skilled in the craft. I think he analyzed scripts for like years for a movie studio. So he's read probably thousands of scripts. And he knows like just what to say. And, because in the beginning, before you finish, you're always saying, oh, this is crap, or I don't know about this part. And he would just say, keep going, just keep going, just keep going. Like he wouldn't even give me any feedback until I finished the first draft. And then once I finished the first draft, then we went page by page. And every time I meet with him, he gives me like 90 minutes, sometimes 2 hours at a time. And I know he does other things besides teaching at Stony Brook. So he really gives me all the time that I need, answers every single question. And so I consider him a friend, as well as a professor and a thesis advisor. And he's another one who I hope to keep in touch with after I graduate, because I value his relationship as a person as well as a mentor.
I pretty much knew immediately I wanted Paul to be my advisor, and I was very much like, fingers crossed. I hope he's not too busy. I know he has a graduate students, blah, 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 the whole shebang. And then I got very lucky when I found out that he really would be my thesis advisor. And just, he is so knowledgeable. It is kind of really difficult to put into words what it's like sitting down and having a conversation with him one-on-one, regardless of what you're talking about. I remember the very early days when we were meeting and talking about my thesis, and I was complaining to him about how I've written like 6 chapter 1s because I don't know what I'm doing. And he just pulls out like 20 books from the bookshelf behind him. He's like, what about these? We should look at these and we should discuss these and see if they give you ideas. And honestly, I don't know how rare they actually are, but I really feel like Paul personally went to like Israel and dug up books from the ground, read them in their original Hebrew, and then just presented them to me.
I could talk forever about Megan. I will get off of my Zoom sessions every single time with Megan, and my mom will like walk in and be like, so how was your call? I was like, I love that woman so much. She's so, like, her life has been so interesting, her sharing her stories and just kind of getting to know her actually has helped me with my writing, because I feel like it's helped me loosen up a little bit. I always felt like writing had to adhere to like such kind of like strict like things, like, you know, it had to be like very technical and very structured. And just through talking to her, she really puts the fun, I guess, like back into writing.
One thing I'd like to say to my thesis advisor, Julie, thank you so much. You have no idea how much validation you have given me as a poet. I've always, since I started writing when I was 16. It's been like 6 years, and I just constantly compared myself to other people. It felt like my writing wasn't worthy enough. It wasn't until last fall when you said the words, "It's my style," that those words just resonated with me and continue to resonate with me, because I write about the same things over and over again, and it was so hard to accept until I received that validation from you. So thank you so much.
I would like to say every thesis advisor, and again, especially Julie, because she worked with me, they had so much patience and support and love for our writing, and I sincerely appreciate that. And I know with me, I've had a very rough senior year, and just by working with our stress and this pandemic, I give all you guys kudos. And again, thank you so much, Julie, for helping me complete this project, because I really couldn't have done it without you.
So one thing I struggle with personally sometimes is the reading for classes can be a little boring. And I always found that Genevieve's readings were always really, really interesting. And I always found that I was just super interested in reading what I had to read for her class. And then I think the one moment I really knew that I really wanted to work with her as a thesis advisor was when I had signed up as a spot for like a short story, and I had not completed the short story at all. And I got to class and I was just like, oh my God, like, oh, I was supposed to write a story. And I didn't, but she was extremely forgiving. And the story that I ended up producing afterwards, like just like really rushed it and stuff. But it turned out to be a story that she thought was really incredible. And she just gave me a lot of confidence about writing from my own experience and seeing the value in writing from my own experience.